Hey, welcome to Persevere to Excel podcast. I am super excited for my guest today. My good old friends that I've been friends with since elementary school. I got Jim and Christopher representing today. How you guys doing?
Not too bad, man.
Yeah, doing pretty good.
Oh, man. So this time of the year is like, it's a lot of festivity, but sometimes, people, they have a little bit of a hard time during this time of the year. So what's your favorite part about this time of the year, guys?
Oh, boy. The food, getting together.
What kind of food, Jim? What kind of food?
Oh, man, I know Chris can relate. Being Dominican, you need to bring out the pernil, roasted pork. Oof.
Yeah, the pork shoulder.
Ooh.
Pork shoulder, that comes in clutch.
Yeah, you leave
every
that.
single event.
Yeah.
Wow, you're making me feel man hungry right now. So tell me a little bit about the recipe that goes around in making this type of food.
Well, it's a process and a half. First off, you need to clean up the pork shoulder, with a little bit, depending, sometimes people do it a little bit different, salt and vinegar, wash it up a little bit, and then you gotta make the sauce, like the paste, which you put in a blender, which is cilantro, garlic.
Oh man, I'm feeling hungry
tomato,
right now.
A little bit of vinegar with oregano, tomato paste. You put that in the blender. After a while, you grab that and it's a rub. You put it on there. And then you leave it in the oven for at least 5 hours. You let that baby cook.
Wow.
Yeah, if you really want to get it like a good flavor in there, you let it sit very low heat pretty much all day. Pretty much like a turkey would. Yep. If you want it to come out juicy and everything, leave that pork shoulder in all day, man.
Yep. Wow. That was an amazing introduction. We started off right with food, but I'm super happy to have you guys on this episode because I've known you guys for such a very long time, and we all migrated to this community where we live in here in Manchester, New Hampshire, and we all connected with each other because we were foreigners trying to find our path and try to find our way, and we've all been able to kind of move forward in life in different opportunities and different occupations that we've taken. But in this podcast, I want to talk about where that bond came from for one another. We created that bond as foreigners who were in this EL class together in 5th grade. And over the years, we've continued to be really good friends. But I would love to we'll go in a circle and we'll start with Christopher. Tell us a little bit about who you are, your background, and how you ended up in New Hampshire, super high level.
Oh, man. So, I was born in Puerto Rico. Grew up mostly with my mom and my sister. A lot of family. A lot of cousins and everything. I would see my dad on the weekends and everything. That was a little rough. Getting used to that. And then out of nowhere, my mom wanted to move out here. We went off to Worcester, Mass. Lived out there for a couple of years. That was probably when I was about 9 years old, and then somehow ended up in Manchester, New Hampshire, out of all places, man.
That's incredible. That's awesome, man. It sounds like that's kind of the journey. We all end up here somehow, and we got to find our way. What about you, Jim? How'd you end up in New Hampshire?
So I'm originally from the Dominican Republic. I was born and raised out there. My mom and dad came out here when I was about 2 years old. And they came out here with my brother and sister. They originally moved to the Bronx. After a while, approximately until I was 10 or so, I lived in the Dominican with my grandmother. My mom wanted me to come up here, so I began the immigration process and everything else. I came here 2000. In New Hampshire, out of all places, it was more just us trying to get out of the city, a bigger city, and finding opportunities in a place like Manchester where, unlike New York, you could fall deep into the bigger city, holes, you know what I mean? And my mom wanted us to get away from all of that, and that's why we ended up, up here. So
that's wild, man. Yeah. And you guys know my story. I came out of the Congo and lived as a refugee for 2 years after my father was assassinated. And we ended up getting selected, and New Hampshire was the place we got selected, and Manchester was the spot. So in our ESL class. It was such a diverse class. We had Bosnians, Nigerian, Kosovo, Sudanese, Sierra Leoneans, Puerto Rican, Dominican. We had everybody. Yeah. And it's so fascinating because the entire school was not diverse. Only the EL classes were diverse. And we were able to kind of find our grounding through that experience. So what was that like, to be in this class where everybody are from all over different places?
Yeah. You know what? It was fun. It was pretty good. You know what? I think more than anything, it was an eye opener for all of us being in there. Because when we came in here, none of us pretty much knew what we were in for.
Right.
My partner, my classmate next to me was Bosnian. None of us spoke English. We communicated in hand signals.
Right. For sure.
I speak Spanish to him, and he speaks Bosnians back to me. And I think that's what brought us together, because I think even though we come from different parts of the world, we all bounded, in a very unique way. Which is it's something that you can't describe when you put two people that never met and don't relate in any aspect, whatsoever. And somehow, some way, you're able to get along and build this relationship.
No, that's true. No, that's a good point, Jim. And I think that what connected us was the fact that we all came from a different place and we were looking for this new opportunities, right?
Yeah,
our families brought us here for a better life. And I always tell this story. It was so fascinating. Some of our Bosnian friends, especially the female ones, they were learning Spanish. They were speaking Spanish. Correct. I don't know if you remember that. They were speaking Spanish. And to me, I was like, bro, what's up with that? Why aren't they learning French or Lingala? Why are you trying to speak Spanish? I guess the Spanish boys were more attractive. I don't know, but you know what I mean? I was like, bro, why are you speaking Spanish right now? But anyways, that was the thing. So, and then we moved on, right? It was 5th grade. So we all went to different schools after that for middle school. I know Christopher and I ended up at McLaughlin for a little bit. And then you went to Hillside, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I went to Hillside. And so how was that as you continue to obviously learn the language, develop and move forward in your learning and stuff, how did you guys find your grounding? In sense of your identity too, right? Because the world around us was very different, but this was our new home. So how did you find your identity as you continue to move on?
Oh man, for me, McLaughlin being a predominantly white school, it was, you can attest to it. You were there.
100%.
We were taken from a place where we fit in with a bunch of different minorities, and we just got dropped there, and it was tough reality to kind of wake up real quick and trying to fit in at the same time. As a kid, you're just you just gotta roll with the punches,
Right, and one of the things happened for you was you were out of EL by the time you went to McLaughlin.
Yep.
I stayed in EL. So I went from 6th grade to another EL program. And the difference probably for me was I was still segregated with mostly other immigrant kids in 6th grade, where Christopher was kind of thrown in with everybody else.
Yep. Man, for me, I took pride in my ability to learn English, and, taking away my accent little by little. And even now, a lot of people tell me, "Oh, you speak very good English." And I'm like, "Well, you shouldn't assume that,
Right. Well, they mean that by not hearing your accent, right?
They don't hear an accent. But sometimes, I struggle with words here and there, and trying to translate something from Spanish into English or vice versa. It's a little different, man. And after leaving McLaughlin, I was only at McLaughlin for 2 years, and then I ended up going to I think I went to Hillside, and that was a little bit more diverse, and there I definitely felt a lot more comfortable, with my surroundings. Like Jimbo was there.
Jimbo, tell me about your experience, because that's where you ended up. You ended up going to this middle school called Hillside, where it was a little bit more diverse. They were sending a lot of EL students because it was like a magnet EL middle school.
Yeah,
it was extremely diverse.
Yeah. So back then they call it ESL, English as a second language, and the classes felt like back at beach. You had next to you, I think in a class of 25, maybe 8 were Spanish speaking, and the rest could have been Sudanese, could have been Bosnian, could have been from different parts of the world. Because we had a girl that was French Canadian, spoke no word of English. She was speaking French to us, we were replying back in Spanish. But being out there, I was in ELL normally you do 3 years,
right?
Middle school. I ended up doing 4 years. And I to this day, I'm still feeling very thankful to a teacher, Patrick O'Neill, who on my 8th grade year, I was getting ready to graduate, move on with my friends. And even though my English skills weren't, I wouldn't feel comfortable with them, just being able to write, read, or even speak English, back then. And he thought up the idea of, why don't you repeat, a year of 8th grade, you're still, within the age range.
Right.
And do another year 8th grade, but this time do it mainstream classes, just non-ELL classes. And I looked at him, I was like, you must be crazy. I want to graduate, I want to move on with my friends.
Right.
And I thought about it, and my parents, my mom back then, thought about it. It's like, I think we'll be better off. And till this day, I truly am thankful because I was able to accept a new challenge. And that is being put in a class where I wasn't going to receive as much help as I was.
Right.
And one of the most memorable things that I do recall from that experience is I was in a class, science class, and that was about first month into school. And the teacher gave us an assignment, and here you go, you do it, read it and stuff. And I couldn't read the assignment because my reading comprehension wasn't up to their expectations. And the teacher in front of everybody else says, well, Jim, if you're not able to read the assignments, maybe you should be going back to ELL.
Wow.
And in front of the whole class. I mean, you can't really tell when I'm blushing, but I was red, and I felt embarrassed. And and many people will take that and and they were like, I'm leaving.
Right.
I'm never coming back. And I really felt hurt at that point, but I took that as a challenge, and I'd never forgotten that.
How did you feel at that moment?
Like, I just wanted to fly away. I sank in my seat. My feet were numb, to be honest, because I'd never been called out, like that. 14 years old, 13 years old, and I still remember him saying that. And but like I said, I took it as a challenge more than not, and I believe I ended up passing this class with the B plus.
Wow.
That's
true redemption right there, man.
Yeah, and I go back once in a while, and I believe he's still teaching now, and he sees me now, and I don't think he remembers.
Right.
what he said
right.
to
It was
me.
probably such a fast pace where he didn't even get what that meant.
Correct.
And he wasn't in tune and how that was going to impact you.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that because I actually had a similar experience, but it was at my church. Yeah. I was in 6th grade EL, and they were planning this Mother's Day thing.
Yeah.
And part of that, the youth group kids had to read different stuff for a video they were making. And I started to feel very anxious. I was like, man, how am I going to do this? We're reading out loud. They have a prompt. And when it was my turn, I wasn't flowing as quickly as everybody else. Mind you, at that point, I've only been in the States for 2 years.
Yeah.
So then the guy who was facilitating the video, he goes, come on, Dale, what you can't read or something? Come on, let's go. Let's go, Dale, read it off. Come on.
Oh, boy.
And it was like a knife in my heart, bro. I just left. That night, I just left.
Yeah.
I felt so embarrassed because my church was predominantly people that have been here for a long time. So my family was the only immigrant family. So when that happened, oh man, that crushed me. I just left and I felt so embarrassed. I was like, man, I couldn't even read this. They called me out. But it's part of the journey, right? You're assimilating to a new community, a new environment. Academically, in terms of reading and writing, it takes time, especially if English wasn't the language that you were brought up in. So experiences like that, man, I can only imagine. But for you, you took that as a way of saying, yo, I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna get better. But the fact that you stayed on the class, man, I give you kudos for that.
Yeah.
So I want to fast forward a little bit. So we end up, going in high school and being involved in high school, and then we all had different pathways that we moved on with. I'm curious to know a little bit more about like what career pathways that you guys took and why was that. So Chris, I want to start with you because I know that you committed your time to serve our country. So first of all, I want to say thank you so much for doing that, man.
Thank you.
Let's talk about that a little bit. What made you pursue that path?
Man, so for me, ever since I was young, ever since I could remember, probably since like the 6th grade, I would always see those commercials, those Marine commercials, and you would see them, with their rifles and everything, and their very pristine uniforms, and to me that was something that really stood out to me. I'm always the type of person that wants to help other people, and I know you guys could attest to that. So to me, that was a way of helping people, and we went through 9/11 and everything. I can remember that as clear as day, and I ended up joining, and of course a lot of the people that joined right after high school, we were still in Iraq, moving into Afghanistan also. What did we want to do? We wanted to go overseas and fight the war, serve our country, and for me now looking back on it, I don't regret any part of it. I don't.
And how long did you serve for?
6 years. I served 6 years. Out of those 6 years, I applied to go to a deployment at least 3 times. Got denied every single time, and the last time that I was denied, one of my best friends went in instead of me, and when he came back, he was not the same. So I thank God and that I was not in his place, because to me it wasn't meant to be for me to go over there and fight a war that that I probably did not have a place in.
Right.
And not to get like too political or anything, but it's something that I look back on it now, and it's a lot of stuff that I don't believe in, I don't agree with.
Right.
We were fighting these wars that they're it's a bunch of boys going out to war and
right.
dying, for what?
Right. I am curious to know a little bit about the skill set that you were able to acquire by being a serviceman for 6 years, man. That's a substantial amount of time that you gave.
So my job in the Marine Corps, I was a cook, and then I ended up doing supplies and logistic, all that kind of stuff. So that kind of, as I was transitioning on my way out, I kind of took those skills and started to translate them into the civilian world, and that was it was difficult. I mean, the Marine Corps physically, it took a lot out of me before I got out. I had, back problems that I'm still dealing with to this day. My shoulder, my right knee, I had to get surgery before I even got out. So it definitely, something like that definitely does take a toll in your body. It ages you a lot quicker than you would expect. But the kind of brotherhood and everything that you build there, I miss it to this very day. Like, I'm always talking to some of the guys that are still in, and I'm like, man, like I wish I could go back, but like I'm an old dog now.
For sure, man. Well, thank you again, and thank you for sharing that. And then, Jimbo, you've had a different path, but also very service-related path, right? In the paramedic and firefighting, and I would love to hear your journey on that.
Yeah. So out of high school, I actually my original plan was to go on play, college football and move on to that, to that level. And I after a while my grades weren't suiting for some of the colleges that I was applying to, and the other thing too, we don't have the type of money to go to school. So I talked to a couple mentors, and someone had mentioned, why don't you become a police officer? And I was like, well, that's something that's, it's cool, but it's, why don't you become a fireman? I was like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. So after a while, I did a couple of ride-alongs, and, it was something I was interested in. And I ended up going to Lakes Region Community College up in Laconia, New Hampshire, and I got an associate's degree in fire science. I volunteered out in various towns throughout the state of New Hampshire, getting the experience needed to become a full-time fireman. But as I found out, it's a very, very competitive field for you to get into. If you don't have all the prerequisites that you'll need for a job like that, it's very hard because it's a lot of candidates out there that are very highly qualifying. So what I did is I continue on working part-time. I worked in a small town in Vermont called Windsor, and I worked there for a year working in an ambulance as a firefighter as well, EMT, and that opened my eyes up a little bit more. And while I waited, I got the chance to come back here to Manchester and work as a fireman here. And I've been
hold on. Before you get to that, let's talk about that transition, because that's I don't want you to minimize the length of time that it took you before you got that opportunity.
Yeah. To
join an actual fire department and get the entire package as a firefighter.
Yeah. So in that journey, it took me to become a full fireman. It took me a year. Mm-hmm. Obviously for various classes. To become an EMT certified, nationally certified, it took me a year and a half. Mm-hmm. I failed a class, multiple times. It's a very difficult class. If you don't devote to that, God bless you if you pass the first time. It's very difficult. And then after that, I worked for the city as a bus driver. I got my CDL. Mm-hmm. So all of that in total took about almost 2.5 years. And then I applied for Manchester. I took the test and everything, and that took 2.5 years. So in reality, I started back when I was like 19 mm-hmm. or 20.
Yeah.
And I didn't get hired till I was 25.
Wow. So that's almost a 6 to 7 year process before you got that opportunity.
Correct. So I applied, and obviously I was towards the end of the application process. Mm-hmm. And I thought about leaving the state. I thought about moving to Massachusetts or even further down.
Finding other opportunities somewhere else, right?
I applied to Charlotte, North Carolina. I didn't pass. Mm-hmm. I got a letter sent, you are a candidate 1,532.
Wow.
Out of 5,300 and something. That's when I really got to find. I was like, okay, maybe I should go back to school.
Yeah. What made you still persevere through? Because we know each other very well. And I was there when that process was happening through. And what made you just not give up, man? Because the reality is when things like that happens, it's so easy for us to just give up. But you never give up, man.
Dale, it's a couple things. And, one, it's just, there's nothing good in getting something too easy. Let's just be real, and I knew the rewarding factor of me becoming a fireman, we're truly something that, money can't define, and the other thing too is that if I've come this far, I can't just give up, not just for myself, but for my family.
Yeah, you devoted 6 years of your life on this.
Absolutely. That's, and my family, was behind me the whole entire way. Didn't, no matter what. And it just, for me to give up halfway or just almost right there, it would have been a huge disappointment, not only for myself, but I wanted us to strive, you know what I mean? I wanted my family to feel, like, oh, we can definitely do this. It's chasing that American dream. And, that's part of it. It's persevering. It's just not, being content with what you have. It's getting a little bit more.
Because essentially you had to start from the ground. We've all kind of had to start from the ground. There wasn't a lot of cushion room to be like, oh, hey, here's some cushion effort. Yep. Yeah. Go do it. It was always
a bit of space for you. No. Yeah. But I want to mention Jimbo says since we first met him in 5th grade, he would say, I'm going to become a firefighter one day. And when he told me he became a firefighter, I had so much pride. Like I started crying. It's
incredible.
Thank you.
No, so Jim and I are super involved in the community. This is a different podcast, but we've served together in this organization called Bring It for many years. And throughout that whole transition of all those different stuff that was happening with his life, he was still serving in the community. And And I just want to say that you're both of you guys' effort and energy and commitment that you've made to get to where you are now is such an inspiration for so many people. It's such an inspiration for our community, but also for people that are going to hear this story. So I would love to have you guys come back again, and we'll do a different interview.
Absolutely.
But if someone's listening to this, right, either I call them either the key holders or the receivers. So the key holders are people that are the influencer, right? Managers, boss, directors, business owners, right? Like teachers, principals. What would you like them to know about people like us, right? That are in their schools, right? Like that are starting from scratch, that are immigrants that came here and are trying, right? Or a manager or a boss that's trying to hire someone, and someone shows up in their list and they're like, oh, is this person going to really fit into our community? What would you want them to know about us, right? And then, so that's part one. And then part two is students, people in our community, people in different communities that are listening to this, that might be on the grind and are about to give up, or they don't know what that next path would be. What would you like to say to them to encourage them?
Oh man, for the bosses and everything, like
the key holders,
the key holders, those people that they think, and in our minds sometimes, they have the key to our future, but in reality, we have the key to our future ourselves. We got to have that, and you can't take no for an answer. Example, myself, I started going back to school just a year ago, and I put it in my mind, I'm gonna go to Emerson College. I'm gonna go to film school. I'm done working for everybody else, and not being happy while I'm doing it. Yes, I'm making money, but am I happy doing this? No, I wasn't. Not one bit. And this past year, it's been a struggle. I have 2 kids. I have a fiance and everything. Trying to do that work-life balance and going to school. And when it came down to it, I got accepted. And
congrats, man. That's a big deal. And
then a hurdle came. And the VA told me, we're not going to be able to fund this, and when I found that out, it was just such a great blow to me that I wanted to quit, and something in the back of my mind was telling me, how bad do you want this?
Yeah.
How bad do you really want this? So I spoke to the school, they waived the enrollment fees and everything. And I kept going through with the process, even though I was being told, we're not going to do this for you. This is as far as you've come. I told myself, no, I'm not going to take no for an answer. I've come this far. I'm going to get even further. And a couple of weeks after that, everything was approved. So here I am next semester. I'm going to film school, and, I'm doing collaborations with Taisha. I'm certainly would love to do some collaboration with you. I've been speaking to Jim about doing some things also. So, as a kid out there, you're in school now. Like, don't let anybody tell you no. Don't let anybody tell you you're not good enough. Because me, as a 10-year-old Puerto Rican kid coming into this country, I was put off to the side, and people told me, they have these expectations of you, and this is as far as you're gonna get. No, I personally never expected to get this far, and now I know I'm gonna get even further than I ever thought.
That's amazing, and you're just starting. Let's go. What about you, Jim?
So for the young ones out there, you know what? And I was talking to someone earlier, just the thought of this too. When we were in middle school, high school, we didn't have these guidance that we can have today,
right.
and the thought, I'm the one that's leading the way for anybody else that wants to become a fireman, because just looking at it, and to me, that's something amazing. You know what I mean?
And you're currently the only person of color in your department, right?
In the city of Manchester.
Wow.
And I just to think about it too, I think I'm one of two in the state of New Hampshire, full-time career.
Wow.
So let that sink in. One of two in the entire state.
Yeah. So I think I'm the only Hispanic bilingual.
You were. I remember you were the first Hispanic firefighter in the state of New Hampshire. Like that's.
Yeah. So you know why, and for anybody out there, man, just don't stop. Just don't stop. You got to keep going, because the battles that you're coming up against now, it's what's gonna truly make it even worth it at the end. And seek guidance from those that can relate to you and been there before. Because if I were to talk to somebody now and be like, hey, look, don't do it that way, do it this way. Who knows where I could have been. You know what I mean? And that's truly it as well. And for those holding the key as well, we got to grow, and we got to grow together. Unfortunately, I see a lot of people out there that have the opportunity, to pass knowledge onto others, and they don't, because they want to possess that. If you have that type of position, and that type of power, we gotta grow together in this, especially in a community like Manchester. We're only, growing in this immigrant city in reality, because that's what made Manchester. That's where the city comes from,
And that's what made this country.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Guys, I am super, super so excited for this conversation. Just could have gone on forever. I'm so excited to have you guys back again. And thank you so much for being on the podcast, Persevere to Excel. Please subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud. Thank you guys so much. Persevere to Excel. Go get it. Bow.